Good afternoon, everybody. This is Christina, and I am here with one of our last tours of faith. We were not able to actually do it in the month of July, but we did record it in the month of July, and we are airing it now. And Tosca has helped us put it together. Tosca, could you tell us a little bit about why you picked this faith?
Well, it's a Melkite Catholic, and they have a big Mediterranean festival every year, which is coming up next weekend. And this church is iconic around here. We have several churches in Birmingham that you just know where they are, and everybody talks about them, and it's so beautiful. And when they have this festival, they give tours of it and give you information and everything that you want to know about it. So I thought this might be interesting to see how, it's so much like Catholic, and yet it is the Eastern influence of um, the Catholic faith instead of the Roman.
Right. All right, so we had a question that went in the chat. I'm going to ask that first with you because Gail is messaging and she's asking if we've ever done anything on the religious traditions of Halloween, All Saints Day, All Souls Day. It's not only the Catholic Church that celebrates All Saints Day, but other as well. And there's a definite relationship between Halloween and those other days. Um,
Yes.
Wait, for that matter, the word Halloween comes from the Scottish word hallow and een, which means saint or holy person, and evening, respectively. That's what Gail said. So, Gail, I will tell you that we actually have in the past done some conversations. They're probably buried somewhere on Zoom about, I think about Halloween or something like that. I forget, but um, I know we can do something on that as well. But Tosca, does that fall in line with what you were wanting to do on Day of the Dead?
I was going to do the cultural aspect of the Day of the Dead and
Yes.
make
So
it
that was
all.
something that Tosca's actually going to do for one of her next conversations. All right. Tabitha, you said, does that mean that it's Byzantine influenced? This is the Melkite Church. Do you know that
So
answer? Because we might have to watch the video and see if we ask that.
yes, it is the
Okay.
Byzantine, but they are not Greek Orthodox.
Okay,
Um,
and since we are having this discussion very quickly, I will just say I think I probably was under the impression that they were Greek Orthodox the entire time, but I wasn't quite sure. So I kind of kept that to myself because I wasn't quite sure what they were. I didn't realize it was Catholic, and I think I don't remember.
well, yeah, it is. I learned the same thing when when we watched the video.
Yeah, so um
But it is Catholic and it is not Greek Orthodox, but they are influenced by them. And
Yes, and Tabitha saying Catholic services are called mass. In this conversation, Tabitha, I think you'll hear that I said that my father was actually Catholic because he's from Cuba and he was raised Catholic. And so I recall in my grandmother's bedroom all of the candles and all of the different things. Um, but I know there's Catholic and I know there's Orthodox. All right, let me go ahead and start playing the video here. All right.
then we'll all know.
I think I had actual share sound. I think I had a video. Mm, okay. Video details. All right. Full screen. All right. With us, the St. George Church in Birmingham, Alabama, and we have with us, I think, Pastor Justin.
Father Justin
Father
Rose, yeah.
Justin, thank you. I knew I was going to mess that up at some point. So we have Tosca, and she is our independent dialogue coordinator in Alabama. So she is over there, and we're recording this for everybody to see. And so we are going to do a virtual tour of faith of St. George Church and talk with Father Justin. All right. So, um, Tosca, do you have questions you'd like to ask him, or shall I?
Well, the first question that I just standing in this church, it's so awesome and beautiful, and the artwork that adorns the walls. So I asked Father Justin if there were requirements to become the artist of this artwork.
Right.
Yes,
So
the iconography I know is very
yes,
cool, and we can pan around in a minute probably and
yeah,
see
and
some
I'll
of
let
it.
me. I can kind of stand. I can stand on the side here. You can see a little bit of it. So there are requirements. Those who are trained as iconographers, it is something where they've learned the particular style, right? So you don't just kind of do whatever you feel like doing. There's a particular style and way of writing or painting an icon. Sometimes they talk about icons being scripture and paint and wood. So they talk about writing an icon. Um, but the colors are all they all mean something, and even the preparation itself. So an icon is done in layers. The first layer is this kind of gesso, this white plaster, and then the icon kind of emerges in layers. And so there's this whole kind of spiritual process that the iconographer goes through, having fasted prior to the writing or painting of the icon, and then reading about the saint or the scriptural passage or whatever it is that he or she is depicting. And so it's not, you don't just kind of sit down, get an inspiration and fire one off. I mean, it's a spiritual kind of practice to write icons. And so
And
but
I
the
think
but
I saw when I saw Tosca, I saw like a little bit that they're all over the walls in there, correct?
they are. Would you like me to pan around real
Yeah,
quick?
could you pan around for a second? Just because I'm like, yes, there's icons. So and then this is the main chapel area, right?
The main church, yep.
The main right.
Yep.
It's gorgeous. I love all that stained glass. And yes,
Yeah,
then they're all
the stained glass is kind of a point of discussion here at St. George.
I personally think of hurricanes because I was originally from Florida, so I'm hoping that it's withstood all sorts of
Oh yes,
hurricanes.
we've got a couple of cracks, but we're generally in pretty good shape. So
Awesome. That's good to know. So
so
tell me a little bit about your faith real quick. I want to jump to that real quick. I know we were discussing iconography, so I wanted to go there, but just a little bit about
right.
your
Well,
faith
I
would be
mean,
great.
in the end, it kind of dovetails because so I'm a Melkite Catholic. The Melkite Church is one of the churches of Antioch, one of the ancient churches of Antioch, which figures in Acts of the Apostles, where the word Christian was first used, and then Saint Ignatius of Antioch, one of the early bishops, coined the word Catholic, meaning universal. And so I've always joked that if we had copywritten those two words, we'd be doing fine right now. But
Oh, yeah, for
but
sure.
anyway,
I didn't know
um,
the word Catholic meant universal.
yeah, that's what the
Yeah.
word means, and I mean it's come now to designate a particular group of Christians, but initially, I mean, but that's what the word means. Um, and so I'm a priest of the Church of Antioch for 29 years, and we are our particular Church of Antioch follows the Byzantine rite. So we follow the same spiritual discipline and liturgy and all of that as the Greek Orthodox, the Russian Orthodox, Ukrainian Orthodox, or their Catholic counterparts. We're celebrating actually this year the 300th anniversary of our particular Church of Antioch declaring communion with Rome. So there was, for the first 1,000 years of the church, everyone was essentially together. And then there was a split between what became known as the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, or churches. And there's debate about exactly how serious that split was for us, as the Church of Antioch wasn't kind of directly involved in all of that. But at any rate, we made it very clear that we came back into communion with Rome in 1724, and immediately there was a new Orthodox patriarch or the head of the church elected, So from that time on, there have been, two sister churches in a sense, one Catholic and one Orthodox, both following the same traditions and ritual and all of that. So,
quick question for you. I remember the Greek Orthodox faith, or the Greek church up in Greenville, they have Greek Fest. And this was brought up at one point. Can the word is escaping my the wafers. Oh, what is that?
Oh, the
communion. So can the Catholics and the Orthodox in there each be in there into communion, or is there a separation of who can and can't?
So yes, there is a separation.
Okay.
So we are not in communion with each other, the Catholic and Orthodox churches. And the kind of physical expression of that is, who can receive communion. We believe it truly is the body and blood of Christ. It's not just kind of a symbol. And so, I mean, for us on our side, Orthodox Christians can receive communion in a Melkite church, but Melkites can't receive communion in an Orthodox church. And many Orthodox who would come here wouldn't receive communion, basically because, again, we're not in communion with each other. So they,
Right.
Out of respect for that.
I've often thought I should do a dialogue conversation on communion, because I come from a different faith, a Christian faith growing up, very evangelical one, where only where you passed everything, but nobody took part of it.
Right.
They passed it as part of the ritual of passing it the tray of unleavened bread and passing the wine, but nobody took part of it because we were not chosen, or it was like, you would know deep inside if that was for you or not. And then going to the Baptist churches here in the South where I'm at, it's like everybody takes it and everybody partakes of it, and I remember sitting there going, am I supposed to take this? I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. Like, am I supposed to know if I'm supposed to take this? Is this something that I should know? And then when this question was brought up at one of the tours at the Orthodox Church in Greenville, South Carolina, I was like, oh, so there actually are people that wouldn't take communion in a different church, but could in another church. And I was like, this whole act of communion is a very interesting.
Just because it's not complicated enough already, right? Exactly.
Yeah. So I just had to ask that, because sometimes I keep thinking I could do a dialogue conversation on communion and what it is and who partakes and who doesn't and why. And
so for us, all baptized Catholics who are in good standing, who are active in their faith and haven't committed a serious sin or whatever, are welcome to receive communion, and the Orthodox as well. And there are some times when an Eastern Catholic would be given permission to receive in the Orthodox Church. Like, for instance, we had a young woman who was living in Alaska, and there were no Catholic churches anywhere. And so they gave her permission to receive in the Orthodox Church, but it's very rare that happens. So
that would make sense, though. That would be a scenario.
The other thing that's kind of a complication, you mentioned wafers. We don't use wafers, right? We use leavened bread, and so we have a round loaf that's baked, and we cut the pieces. We cut what the people are going to receive from that.
So the last time I was at church and they did this, it was a thing all in one, and you lift it off the top, and the top was the wafer, and then inside was the grape juice, and you drank the juice, and it was all in, and I was like, oh, this is so very interesting.
Marketing is such a great thing, isn't it?
Somebody is marketing this really good.
We stay low tech with all of that. But the difference, the reason why there's a difference between the two is a scriptural one. So Roman Catholics and many Western Christians follow the fact that the Last Supper in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the Last Supper was the preparation day for Passover. Was Passover, and gotcha. so that would have been the Feast of Unleavened Bread, right? With the Byzantine tradition follows the Gospel of John, where it was the preparation day for Passover, and so it would have been regular leavened bread, right? And the reason for that is a theological one, that John was making the statement that Jesus was crucified at the time they were slaughtering the Passover lambs in the temple, right? So that he is the Lamb of God, right? So it's a theological statement, but it does, it's a very different kind of way of of celebrating communion, that, it's not just a matter of pouring some wafers or preparing them however they are, but
Right.
we actually have to have baked bread, and it has to be, prepared in a certain way and so forth.
And then do you do wine? Then I would assume you do a traditional
Absolutely.
wine. Right.
Yes, right.
Like
It has to
modern,
be
some
pure.
people do grape juice and they
Right,
find that,
right.
but
Yeah, no, we're the Christians who can drink. So, um, and so, the Psalm 103 we pray at evening prayer every night. Praises God for wine that gladdens the human heart. So,
yes, yes.
just not too much, because then it doesn't gladden the human heart.
Guard against drunkenness is what I always remember.
That's right.
Guard against drunkenness.
That's right.
So, yes.
But yes, we use it. It has to be pure wine, so it can't have any additives or anything in it. But yeah, we use bread and actually leavened bread and wine.
Very interesting to know. Okay. All right. What else? I was gonna ask.
So let me go back to the icons for a minute, because there's we talked about like how they're made, but then there's a theology of iconography. You can actually read an icon, right? And iconography is very much kind of embedded in they're not just art, right? They are a theological statement, and we believe that they're windows into heaven, right? So that they're not just, we don't worship icons, but they are in a sense like a cell phone I'm talking to you on, that St. Basil the Great said that the veneration, the honor that I pay to the figure on the icon goes to the one who is depicted. Right?
Gotcha. Yes.
And we don't worship Mary, and we don't worship St. George and all the other saints. We venerate them, we honor them, but we do worship Jesus. And so, with the icon of Jesus that we have here, when I pray before that icon, or I kiss that icon, whatever it is, I'm honoring Jesus. I'm not worshiping paint and wood, Gotcha. And that was something that, it's one of the things that has come up over and over again in Christianity. In fact, in the history of the Byzantine Church, it started in the 8th century and was finally resolved in the 9th century, this period called iconoclasm, when some of the emperors thought that, maybe since Islam had arisen in the 7th century, and they don't have images, that maybe God was telling us something. And so they kind of took away some of the images, and so there was this whole kind of fight about whether we can have them in our churches. And when it was finally resolved in, 842, that we could have them, they, put them everywhere. Nothing succeeds like excess. So,
Gotcha.
but the holy place is behind this wall here, and so you can literally see. The theology of the church is that that's heaven and this is earth, right? Where we're standing here in the nave of the church. So it literally is kind of a window into heaven, in a sense, when you that these saints and of course Christ Himself are in heaven, and so we're praying before them, and then the clergy go into the holy place and represent all of the people celebrating the services and so forth.
Okay, and then if I'm correct, Jesus is always represented in there with the crown over his head.
So you can probably see. Let me pull you closer. Excuse me. Let me show you this one here.
I think it would be great to have some. I remember a little bit of that knowledge. Yes, and it would be great to understand some of this for some of us that might not ever have a tour.
So actually, the halo, that round circle, predates Christianity, and it was originally like for a famous person. We talk about like a star today. People get stars in Hollywood on the ground, right? So even like for illustrious Roman citizens or something, they would have been given a halo. You can see it in some artwork. So it was adopted by Christianity, not for just famous people, but for holy people, for saints. And you can tell Jesus because his halo always has the Greek letters Omicron, Omega, Nu, which is the phrase Hoon, the one who is. It's a translation, a Greek translation of the word Yahweh.
Gotcha.
So it's I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
I am the one. And so and also again in terms of reading an icon, you notice that here Mary is wearing blue covered by red. And then on the other side, and always we have Mary on one side with holding Jesus, and then Jesus on the other side of the holy doors here. You
Right.
notice that Jesus is wearing red covered by blue. And it's a statement that Jesus is God and he put on humanity, and that Mary, like all Christians, is human and she has put on divinity, that God has given, by grace, has taken her into heaven to be in union with him, right?
Oh,
So,
I got you. Yes.
so like typically in Western representations of Mary, she would always just be wearing blue. But for us, she always wears blue covered by red. And you can also see, I don't know if you can see the stars on her shoulder and on her head. There are actually 3 stars, but baby Jesus is covering one of them. And that's just a reminder that we believe that she was a virgin before, during, and after childbirth.
Okay,
So,
because I remember that Mary was the one that was holding the baby Jesus in
right.
the
Well, because
iconography that I've seen in Turkey and stuff.
yeah, because the thing is, like, Mary's not the point, right? Jesus is the point. And in fact, she's making that point by pointing right at Jesus. People oftentimes will criticize us for our veneration of Mary, but in fact, I mean, Mary is the first and the greatest of all Christians as far as we're concerned. And so she bore God into the world, literally. you know
Right.
so you can tell, I mean, so then all of the theology, everything that we believe is kind of, we're surrounded by it, right? I mean, all of the kind of the teaching of the church is woven into the theology of these icons. It's not just, like, again, someone's, funny idea or whatever, they wanted to paint something. All of it's there to be instructive. And we were talking earlier about the kind of the iconography that's extant in a place like Turkey, for instance, right? And so there were places in the Byzantine Empire, the Roman Empire in the East, that had workshops and that developed these styles, right? And you can tell kind of earlier and later
Gotcha.
styles.
Right.
But then, so you oftentimes someone out, say in Cappadocia, who was wealthy enough to afford it, would bring out an iconographer from Constantinople, right, who would decorate their whole cave church with iconography of this style. But then the more local style was much more kind of rustic and homey, even sometimes just like geographic or what's the term? Figures like squares and stars and crosses and
Right.
all of that.
Right. Right. Yeah. Very neat. Very interesting. Um, I remember looking at everything before going, is that what we looked like back in biblical times? Because I feel like our faces change over generations of people. So things shift and change. So I remember looking going, oh, were we that structured?
Yeah, I mean, even the kind of design of the face is meant to be, instructive. So in the ancient world, the long nose was a sign of nobility, right? Um, but then oftentimes you'll see large ears on the icons because these people were listening to the word of God, and you always see both eyes, with very few exceptions. You always see both eyes because the eyes are the window to the soul, right? And the icon is the window into heaven. So you're able to kind of commune with um, you
I
know
got you. That makes
that
sense to
saint.
have both eyes.
Now the one exception on the icon of Christmas is way in the back of the church, so I won't walk us back there, at least right now. But there's a depiction of Saint Joseph kind of being troubled by what's going on. He's kind of represents all the doubt of all humanity, and there's a figure in black skins, like you're dressed as a shepherd, and you only see one eye with him because he's the devil, right, tempting Saint Joseph.
Oh, I
But then
got you.
here's the other one this is the icon of the Last Supper. Let me see if you can see the whole thing. You step back for a second. The icon of the Last Supper is typically over the holy doors, right? And if
Right.
you look, there's a guy right there. You can only see one eye, and that's because he's Judas Iscariot.
Oh,
So,
I got you. Interesting to
so
know that.
but sometimes it like the figures have to kind of be contorted a little bit, so that you can get both eyes, because like the figure they're supposed to be in, um, doesn't promote them sitting facing you. So sometimes they're kind of curved around a little bit.
Right. They might
Um,
look a little funky because you're getting both eyes. That's interesting to know.
exactly.
I never knew
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
Okay, so question for you. Is over there behind your shoulder, there is a gold post with can you explain?
Yep. So we light candles as a way of offering prayers to God, and they're just thin tapers, and they go in the sand. The sand holds them. It's just kind of beach sand. And actually, when I was doing field work in Thessaloniki, in Greece, there are like 10 medieval churches still functioning. So they're terrified of fire.
Mm.
So they would actually put a layer of water in there as well, so that when the candle got down far enough, it would just put itself out.
Oh,
But
very
it's just basic.
interesting.
I mean, it's instead of like sometimes you see the racks that have little cups in them.
Right.
This is basically the same. This is the solution that we had years ago. Apparently, someone came up with the idea of just putting something there that you could set the candles in.
And then do you I don't know if it's your faith or not. Do you guys do frankincense?
Oh, yeah,
Or
we do
is,
tons of incense. Yes.
yes.
What?
So can you explain that?
Sure. Well, first of all, I mean, it's something that was offered in the temple as a in the Jewish temple as a worship for God. The Psalm says, "Let my prayer rise like incense before you." Right.
Hmm.
And that again is one of the psalms that we use, Psalm 140, every night during evening prayer. And we do an incensation at that time. We bless the church with incense and so forth. Um, there are a couple of different ways of making that incense. The style that it's been come to be called the Athonite style, so that the monks on Mount Athos do it this way, where
Hmm.
they take that frankincense and they prepare it. They warm it up, I think, a little bit, and then they add oils and scents to it, so that they can have various kinds. It's not just raw frankincense, although we can burn that, but it has particular fragrances and so forth. And
Right.
uh,
And do particular fragrances do certain things? Do different things?
really, I mean, like there's one particular one that I use for feast days, because it's more expensive, and it's got this kind of really wonderful smell. And there's one the smell of, what's it called, royal violet, for me is the smell of Easter, of Pascha. And so
Uh-huh.
the whole season of Easter we use just royal violet, because it's one of those things. Years ago I started doing it, but that's no rule. That's just
That's just your thing.
that's
Well,
me.
I remember on our tour that we did when we were in Turkey, I use essential oils for health. And so I use frankincense, and I'll put a drop of frankincense under my tongue, or I'd put it on my throat if I felt like my throat was sore. And every time I did that, Father Marcus would go like, I feel like I'm in church swinging the
everything
incense.
that we wear everything that we wear, when we walk out into the sun, you can smell the incense come off our clothing. Yeah, but the odor of sanctity, right? I mean, that's the whole
Right.
point.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
But
interesting.
yeah, but there's no like, we don't associate any healing properties or anything with incense, in terms of the going back to your original question. um the incense was used in imperial processions during the Byzantine Empire, and it was used again, in worship to venerate God and to venerate the saints. And so both of those, we use it in processions here in the church when we're celebrating the liturgy. We have two major processions, and the incense goes along with in both of them. And
Hmm.
then we use incense constantly throughout the service. So.
What are there any specific holidays or that you guys celebrate, or do you use a different calendar, I think, than
Yes. So yes to both. So we have a 1 year cycle of readings, right? So gospel and epistle readings from the New Testament. And some of that is calibrated to the particular feast days and so forth. So the major feast of the church year is exactly the same for all Christians. It's Easter or Pascha, right? When Jesus rises from the dead. And that cycle for us, it's dependent upon, and this is above my pay grade. It's dependent upon the equinox and all the kind of the cycle of the sun and the moon and all of this business.
Right.
So that's in the seminary when the professor started explaining how to calculate the date of Easter, I got into this equation about yay far, and someone said, "But has it been calculated?" He says, "Oh yes, through the year 3000." And I closed my notebook.
Absolutely, I've been there. Sometimes I'm like, is that taken care of? I don't have to think about that. Okay,
yeah, right,
okay.
Exactly. So
I'll just open the calendar up and it's written in 10 little tiny letters, and I'm good.
Right. Exactly right. So Pascha is the center of the year, and we have a 40-day preparation time we call Great Lent, and we have several weeks of preparation for that. One of the things I love about the Byzantine rite is that we never like sneak up on a feast day or anything. Like there's always preparation for it, and so we fast very strictly during Lent. It's a vegan fast with no wine or olive oil during the weekdays. On feast days and on the weekends, we can have wine and olive oil. So, we kind of ease our way into that.
Interesting.
In the West, there's Carnival or Mardi Gras. We kind of have an extended Carnival and Mardi Gras. We have first Meat Fair Sunday, which is the last time we can have meat, and then Cheese Fair, which is the last time we can have dairy and so forth. And then Lent begins the next day for us on that Monday.
So it's like a sliding into veganism versus
it just kind of, and it eases you in. I mean, you come out pretty suddenly because on Pascha you eat everything you possibly put your hands on. But
I did vegan for a while, and I know. I mean, there's a curve to it.
There is.
It makes it a little bit difficult,
It's challenging, but we all look forward to it because our prayer life also changes completely in the Byzantine tradition during Lent. And so it's a really beautiful time of the year. The 40 days after Pascha or Easter is the Paschal season, and that ends with the ascension of Jesus into heaven, and then Pentecost, the descent of the Holy Spirit. So that cycle is essentially the same for most other Christians. I mean, Christians that are liturgical, that follow liturgical seasons.
Right.
Of course, we celebrate Christmas, and there's a 40-day fast prior to that as well. And then the Christmas and the baptism of Jesus in January. It seems to me that everybody tells the same story, but we break it up differently, right? So like Roman Catholics, for instance, celebrate Christmas, the birth of Jesus, on the 25th of December. And then they celebrate the wise men, the visit of the wise men on January 6th, and then the baptism of Jesus. We celebrate all of those things except the baptism of Jesus on December 25th.
Oh, okay.
And then January 6th is not the visit of the wise men, it's the baptism of Jesus. So,
gotcha.
And Armenians celebrate the entire thing on January 7th, 6th, January 6th.
Right.
So they celebrate the whole story.
Versus December 25th, when
they don't do anything on December 25th. It's on January 6th.
Right. Yeah.
And that was the original way. I mean, the feasts got broken up for various reasons over the years, actually fairly early. But the Armenians held on to the original tradition, so they're the only ones.
And I'm guessing feasts were the popular thing to do back then. That was the way of getting together with everybody and
eating meat. Sure.
And eating, right, because that's when you did that.
Well, yeah, because you got to figure, even in the pagan Roman world, right? I mean, you didn't have beef. I mean, because there was no way to refrigerate it,
right?
Unless everyone was going to be there to eat it.
One of our dialogue coordinators is in Ecuador, and she will post pictures sometimes of them at the markets. And there's all the meat is hanging, all the fish are hanging, not the fish, the chicken, the meat, the beef, and there's no refrigeration. And I'm just like, is it cooler over there? She goes, nope, I think you just pray before you eat.
Well, but I mean, you can dry stuff and salt it and all those kinds of things too.
Yes, you can do some of that prepreservation stuff. But she says, no, there is not. She says, I think you just buy it, you go home, you cook it.
Yeah.
That's it. It's
and keep your fingers crossed, right?
Keep your fingers. So I think you just pray.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like our fasting practices, for those who were poor in the ancient world, nothing really changed because they didn't have
Right.
access to all the things that, it was really the wealthy. It was kind of equalizing so that the wealthy could empathize with those who were suffering, and so when you think about, no meat, no dairy, no wine or olive oil, I mean, that's all party foods, right? You're not going to have a party and you're not going to have a rich banquet with lentils and
Right.
rice.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
For sure. Very
yeah.
interesting. And then you have a different calendar, correct? Did you?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, the major feasts would be the same for anybody. The
Okay.
in the Catholic and Orthodox churches, there was the original calendar was known as the Julian calendar, and
Mm-hmm.
it was, and again, this is I always have to kind of think this through. It was a lunar calendar, so it's now off by like 14 days, and it's going to continue to lose time. So some Orthodox today, mostly Old Calendar Greeks and some Russian Orthodox, will celebrate on things on that calendar still. And so like
Okay.
they would celebrate Christmas on January 7th because that's actually 14 days. It's for them, it's December 25th, if that makes sense.
You're right. I got you.
So there was a revision of the calendar by Pope Gregory, so-called Gregorian calendar, and it actually is way more accurate. And so that's the one that all of us are on. Most Orthodox are on it for the kind of calendar day feasts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like things that happen on a certain day. But for Pascha, that whole cycle that shifts depending upon again the cycle of the sun and the moon. So they go with all of the Orthodox, so that we call it the revised Julian calendar, right? Again, because it's not
Right.
complicated already. So that's been that's like this year it was 5 weeks off. So we celebrated Pascha, and then 5 weeks later, the Orthodox celebrated Pascha. Next year, because of the way they line up, we're going to celebrate it together. In 2025, we celebrate Pascha together. And there has been serious talk between Pope Francis and Patriarch Bartholomew about everyone, about the Western Church and all of the other churches that follow the new calendar, so-called, will go for the date of Easter. Will go with the Orthodox, so that way we would have one Pascha celebration. You know, we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of politics involved. You would think something like that would be simple, but
All
yeah.
right. Yeah. Very neat. Very interesting to think of. Um, all right. I was trying to think,
I
is
think
there any?
Tosca has a question.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Tosca.
Um, all the symbols on the Last Supper, do
Mhm.
they each have a meaning? Like, because there's
Well, I mean, it was
salt.
a meal. No, I no, actually, no. There's nothing like that. Let me show you her. So she was asking. Whoops, let me turn it around. She was asking if the things on the table there have any symbolic meaning. Not to my knowledge. I mean, but it was. I mean, it was a meal. So I mean, there's fish there and various things. And the I mean, typically in the ancient world, you reclined for dinner. You laid down on a couch, and so they've tried to kind of invoke that a little bit. Although everyone, I guess, sat up for the photo, but but there's but no, it's funny. When we do our festivals coming up, September 12th, 13th, and 14th, and we do church tours continuously through the entire time, and so we spend up to an hour and a half sometimes talking about all the symbolism all over the place. And then someone will point to something and we're like, yeah, no, that has no symbol at all. There's nothing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
There's no. Yeah. And it's funny because I've seen the church through, new eyes, it's like, oh yeah. What's Jesus doing with this thing? Oh, that's a really good question. Again, so everything that we, it's not just pretty art, right? Everything
Right.
has a meaning. And you'll notice that Jesus holds his hands a certain way, and so does St. John, and others throughout the church. You hear the angel Gabriel as he's announcing to Mary, he's holding his hands the same way. And that is the initials of Jesus Christos. So Yoda Sigma, Chi Sigma. All right. And so when I bless with my hand like that, because I'm not blessing with my own hand. I'm blessing with the name of Jesus Christ. Right. And again, with icons, because they can't speak, like, but they oftentimes will have a text. And there are icons actually where you have one figure on one side and the other figure on the other side, and there's a kind of a dialogue that goes back and forth. But there's also a visual language. And so what's the angel Gabriel doing there? He's announcing to Mary that she's going to conceive Jesus. And so he's got his hand with the name Jesus Christ, right?
Gotcha. Right.
So that's a really good question. And even like, I'm looking here, the icon of Mary with Jesus in her lap. He's got his hand in that gesture of blessing.
Wait, go closer to his hand just so we can see, because it's a baby hand. It's kind of tough to see. I'm just curious. So, yep, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then you guys, you don't have a dome. I was going to say you don't have it. You just have
It's a funny story. No, we don't have a dome. We have this kind of weird double arch. So this church was built by, at that time, Father Joseph Raya, became Archbishop of Galilee. And Raya was a very interesting guy. He was a pioneer in many ways in terms of justice and peace. He marched with Dr. King. And when he went to Galilee, he was, of course, this was in the 60s. I mean, so there were a lot of Palestinians who had been displaced and their villages destroyed and so forth. And so he started to use the peaceful protests that he had learned from Dr. King there in Israel. So, but prior to that, he was the pastor here at St. George. And at that time, we didn't have our own bishop. And because we're Catholic, what would happen is that we would fall under the jurisdiction of whatever Roman Catholic bishop was geographically here. So it was the bishop of Mobile at the time. The Birmingham diocese didn't exist yet. And the bishop of Mobile was not a terribly enlightened guy. Didn't really have much use for us. We were referred to as those people several times in several documents. And so when Raya designed the church, he was going to put a dome in like it's proper, but Bishop Tulin forbade him to do it. Had to look like everyone else's church, right? And he also insisted that we put confessionals in the back of the church, which we don't use. We celebrate the sacrament of confession in front of the icon of Christ. But they had to put confessionals in. They used them as broom closets. But the Roman Catholics, even now, I'm not sure if the Roman Catholics have gone back to the idea of a confessional where you've got the space with a priest and then people come in on either side and it's anonymous. But we never had that custom. And so now, I don't know if you can see it, but one side is our baptistry, and then the other side is the shrine that we hold the tomb that we use on Holy Thursday and Friday. So, and on Pasta.
Interesting. Okay, so just a question or two. With some of the churches we've toured virtually, they have their own cemeteries. So I'm curious, do you have your own cemetery?
No, no. Some churches do. I mean, in fact, there's a cemetery about 10 minutes away that our people have bought family plots in. So, I mean, in effect, we do. So many of our families are right down the street at Elmwood Cemetery. And they've got, like I said, big family plots that they've had for years, and so
right.
As the generations go, they have a place to be buried. But I think one of our parishes in the United States does. They have their own cemetery, and I don't know what arrangements they've made for that.
No, I was just curious because I mean I've learned over time that some of them have crypts, and so when somebody high official in the church passes away, they end up getting buried in the crypt in the church. And I find that very interesting. And then I know some have
our church hall is below us, and so that probably wouldn't work. But so we have relics of saints here, but we don't have any burials here in the church.
I just figured I'd ask because I find this very interesting. There's one of our videos, there's actually a tour, but you have to do it live at the time. And there was a church in New Hampshire that they have below them was their crypt. And they said if somebody was buried, it wasn't pleasant in the church that week. It was because
Yeah.
they didn't have the property to have, so their crypt was below the church.
Right.
And so no, it wouldn't be good for you guys. And I just find this like amazing that that's what they chose. That's what they did. I mean, it's just kind of a fascinating thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a variety of factors, like especially in a place like, I mean, I grew up in Maine, so I'm actually born in New Hampshire.
Right.
It's cold there so much, it's hard to bury for 6-7 months a year. So crypt makes sense in some ways,
Yeah, it was interesting to learn about because I didn't think I would be learning about that.
Right.
So
funny where you end up going, right?
Yeah. So my mind now has to ask everybody, like, do you have a cemetery? Anything else? Tosca, do you have any other questions?
Well, I have a lot of questions, but I think that you have covered this very well. And
okay, I was gonna say you have like time. You probably have time for like one more really good question.
What's behind that wall? So, John, right? John just asked what's behind the wall, and maybe what I can do is to show you. So a Byzantine church, and this, Christina, will probably be your last big question.
Yes, this would be.
It's one of those can of worms. So the back of the church where you enter is called the narthex, and the narthex was originally in the ancient world a kind of an open porch. In fact, we have an exo-narthex here at St. George. We have actually an open porch outside. But the narthex is this kind of liminal space. It's the place that you come from the world into where the people of God meet and heaven and earth come together, right? So, and that's the nave of the church where we've been standing. And it's called the nave because it looks like an upside down ship. It looks like there's a boat over us, right? The kind of the ribs of the ship. Okay, so I'll go in and open the doors. You guys can't come in, unfortunately. But this is the holy place, and it's designed with the Jewish temple in mind. So you notice we have a candelabra there, and then the dimension of the altar also follows the dimensions in the book of Leviticus, and we have a curtain. You're seeing it from the back side, so separating the Holy of Holies. And so I would come through these doors. I would come through these doors when I'm reading the gospel, when I'm giving communion. But we don't use these doors, just like I don't walk in and out of them, right?
Gotcha,
so that's why we have the two side doors, like you just saw, which we call the deacon doors. And our deacon doors have deacons on them, lo and behold.
I gotcha.
But they also could have, this one would have the Archangel Michael, because this is the door that people go in, and the Archangel Michael is the defender of heaven. And then the other side would have the Archangel Gabriel, and because he was the messenger, came out of heaven to announce to people what was going on. So it's funny because when I've been here 7 years now, and I knew the door was here because I know how the structure is, but I couldn't figure out where the handle. So I kind of, the first time I was here, I kind of pushed a little bit. Oh, there it is. Okay, good. So
right, because from the front it looks like just a painted panel.
That's exactly it. If you come out exactly,
it's a hidden door. It's
a hidden door. Yeah.
Right.
So
very cool. Interesting.
Our bells. It's a wonderful feature of the church that we've got these beautiful bells.
Right.
Yeah. So, so that's basically. The structure of the church is such that in the ancient times, before the icon screen was full, the bishop's throne that you can kind of see there in the back behind the altar would have been up on this kind of stadium seating. And Christina, you mentioned Ephesus before. If you saw the ruins of the 6th century church of St. John in Ephesus, then you saw the stadium seating that the bishop would sit at the top of, and he would preach from there.
So there was a church. I was in Ephesus, and to the right there was a small little amphitheater kind of thing, and then to the left we walked a little bit, and there was the ruins of a church. And we
Mhm.
actually got, and that might be what you were talking about, because I've been trying to find on my Facebook where I posted pictures of that. I've been trying to find those pictures because there's a picture where we all stood in the baptismal pool and took a
Yes.
picture of us.
Yes, I have pictures of that too.
Yeah. And I've been trying to find this, and I've been trying to remember what church that was.
St. John, the
Okay,
Church of St. John the Evangelist.
gotcha.
Yeah,
Right, which was one of Jesus's disciples, correct?
that's correct. He was the author. Oops, sorry, trying to close the doors here without causing a problem. He was the author of the Gospel of John and the letters of John in the New Testament, and also then the Book of Revelation. And he was exiled to the Greek island of Patmos at one point, but he had time in Ephesus as well, and
Right.
he's interred there. Yeah.
Right, yes. I found it very interesting. I had like one of those epiphany moments when I was there in that
Mhm.
spot, and I was
Mhm.
like, oh, I think I think we could end there. I don't think we need to have my epiphany because we're we're almost at an hour here, so I want to make sure um that uh yeah. Problem. Not a problem.
Wonderful. Very good.
All right. Thank you very
Okay.
much, Tosca.
Thank you, Christine. And
I'm
we
gonna
will
let you, yes, and I'm gonna let you go because I think what I'm gonna do after showing, okay, so there we go. We're done there. So um any I want to find this also. There was the Saint Saint George, right? Melkite Church. Um Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama, right, Tosca? Yeah, you're muted. But all right, so I wanted to I actually was thinking that um no, Greek Catholic Church. Wait, one of these I know is wrong that I did. Um nope, this is it. I just want to share this with you guys real quick. This is what the church looks like on the outside, and I had forgotten to do this before that.
For my soul.
very interesting. I just thought some of you might want to see like the bigger overview of what it looked like. So I was hoping that I asked a lot of questions for you guys. So I wanted to just check and see, does anybody have any questions or thoughts? I don't know, has anybody toured like I have been across other countries where you've gotten to see the iconography in other places? I never had an appreciation for it until I went to Turkey with the Greek Orthodox pastor that we were with on our tour group. And he would sit and he'd explain all the iconography. And it was really very cool to hear and learn all of it. So I don't know if anybody else has had that experience. Tosca, I muted you earlier, so if you want to unmute and say anything, you can. I also want to tell you it's all very tough to watch yourself on video. That was hard. My daughter came up, she goes, "Are you watching yourself?" And I said, "Yes, I am." Not easy. Anyway, I thought that was a very informative tour of faith. I wish that we could have even just done it live like now, but I know that was much easier to record. He had Pastor Justin, not Father Justin, had so much input and information. It'd be so cool if y'all want to drive to Alabama. This next weekend is their big festival that they're going to have for 3 days, and you can get an in-person tour.
And food.
And food, yes, and food. So, any thoughts or questions? I will say Gail earlier said, did the incense also help? And I believe yes, it did. It also helped mask the smell of unbathed bodies because there was not a lot of hygiene back then. So, like with the British judges used the nosegay to help mask their body odor. So, yes, I do believe that incense also did help with some of that. I probably would have enjoyed being showered with incense, I know, if I was stinking. So, and come out of there for a day or something like that and smell like, you have to know that people must have really smelled, right? So they knew where you were or where you were at. So if you came out of there, people would have known that you were at church too, that you were at a church service based on, like him saying like his clothes when he goes out, like outside afterwards, that they're full of frankincense smell. Um, so that
And
that was help too.
the Romans used 5,000 tons of frankincense every
Yeah,
year.
yeah. Um, yes, you're welcome, Saida. Yeah, it was quite. I was trying to make sure that while we were there, and I will tell you towards the end, I'm so glad John asked what's behind the door, behind the curtain. And then I thought to myself, oh, you guys couldn't even walk back there. So I was thinking you weren't going to be able to see it until we did this video. So you could see what was behind there because he walked around it all. But then when he got back to you guys were still standing far out there. And I was like, uh-oh, they're not going to get to see what was back there until they watched it now. Um, you know, but it's a very interesting um it's just very interesting. I think some of that iconography, I thought it was really neat to learn like the long noses, what they were for, like the bigger ears, what they were for, um, the one eye versus the two eyes,
Yeah,
um,
like that. Yeah.
was very interesting. The hand signal, the hand gesture. Um, I thought it was neat too because a lot of people do think that you're just praying to a piece of wood sitting up there, though, or that it's an idol or it's a piece of wood. But to get that, they think of it as there's two eyes as like windows to the soul, like windows to heaven, like windows, so they fully have that they are praying to Jesus or to those those disciples. And I thought it was very interesting how they have the indoor and the outdoor. I mean, there's so much thought put into this. Like the indoor is like Michael, and then the outdoor is Gabriel, because he came out of heaven. So it's very interesting. And then even like the homage almost to Judaism, like the back and the way it's all set up and the way it's all done with the Judaism in mind. It's all very, very interesting. It's very neat to listen and learn about it.
I'm going
Um,
to tour when I go to the festival.
I'm sure I'm sure it's even going to be more interesting even at the tour, the festival. All right, anybody have any thoughts or comments or anything else to add to that? Because I mean, I don't know that you might be Catholic on this. I'm not really sure. Anyway,
This is a major church because it was the guy who went to Antioch. It was
mm,
it's a very important church in their
The
hierarchy.
church, well, I think those were the beginning. The Church of Antioch.
No, but this particular church
right,
it was established by a fairly high level minister.
Yeah.
right from Antioch.
Yeah.
Um, I find it because I find so I personally, and I don't know what the architecture of Alabama looks like, but it looks very plain to me on the outside. It looks
Yeah.
very different architecturally than I might see a Melkite church like looking. And I think that's because I'm so used to seeing the big dome and the show of it some, like because there's so much history in ways things are. And from when I look at it, it's just like this big rectangular, I'm like, oh, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of we actually have a Jewish synagogue here in Greenville that looks very much like that. It reminds me of the Jewish synagogue,
Wow.
the way it's created.
Not like a Catholic, not like a Roman Catholic church.
Yeah, the
Right,
Roman.
yeah. Because Roman Catholic has more ornate stuff, I think, on the outside of it
Yeah, right.
to designate itself as a Roman Catholic church. But I think the Catholic church we have here down the street from us is actually not that ornate either. So I feel like I should go over there and go talk with them and see if I could do a tour conversation because it'd be neat to learn about it. All right. It's 3:15. So I just want to make sure anything else anybody has to say. Teresa, I know trying to get off here before an hour and a half because she asked if it was going to be an hour and a half. I said no, it's going to be more like one. And so I'm gonna save Grace. I finished 15 minutes earlier. Any other thoughts or questions? So thank you all very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So, hey, Teresa.
Nothing, nothing. Thank you.
All
Very
right.